I'd like you to keep it going and give a warm Coolidge welcome to the filmmakers Andrew Slater and Jakob Dylan. Welcome. We're gonna start with a little Q&A while we get the stage set, if that's okay with everybody. Andrew and Jakob, thank you so much for being with us today. I was wondering if you could start with the beginning, how this project came together. You talk about being inspired by a particular film.
Yeah.
But what was the catalyst for this project?
Okay. Well, first, standing in the back and looking at this theater and the film in this theater, I've seen it in a lot of places. It's really beautiful here. I'm just so happy
thanks.
to see. You're so lucky. I wish I lived here and I could come see Casablanca here. Anyway.
July 8th.
Yeah, I might be back. But for us, this really started, we're not filmmakers. We are record makers. We started at least as record makers. We may have made this film. But for Jakob and I think, sometimes in your life, you have to look at where you've come from to figure out where to go next. And that moment happened for Jakob and I when we were, I was in a period of transition. I had just left Capitol, which we will call Fired, and and Jakob had just made this Wallflowers record and done the album tour. So we were sitting there, and Model Shop came on, and it, for us, it was such an evocative thing. We saw LA at a time of complete innocence and shot through the beautiful lens or eye of Jacques, Demy. And it reminded us of the music of that period. It also reminded us of Gary Lockwood's journey. That character in the film. Actually, there's this amazing Joan Didion quote, which I should read. It says, "A good part of any day in Los Angeles is spent driving alone through streets devoid of meaning to the driver, which is one reason the place exhilarates some people and floods others with an amorphous unease." And, that really sort of sums up the beginning of us sort of looking back at what was happening in that period of time in '65, and it led us to the songs, and the songs all had a story behind them, and so we were trying to figure out maybe this research that we're doing in terms of finding all the songs and stuff, maybe it's more than just a record. So we went to some filmmakers to make the film, because we were not filmmakers, and the first guy we went to, we gave him the treatment and the songs, and he said, "That's never going to make it to a theater." I was like, okay. Wow. Next guy we went to, he said, "Look, this is a good idea. If you give me $2 million, I can make this movie for you." It's like, buddy, I don't have $2 million. Like, okay. So then we went to the label where we were going to make this record, and the guy at the record company says, "You know what? You make it." And I said, okay, well, that guy's an idiot. But it turns out he's an idiot savant, because look, it's happened. Anyway, that's the basic arc of us sort of getting involved in the beginning.
I like that you said, when you talked about not being able to get the film in theaters, going to those first asks. With so many documentaries going to streaming platforms, was it always going to be, obviously it is important to you guys. You're supporting this theatrical run in such a huge way. But why was it important for this film to meet audiences like the one here today, on screen?
Well, I don't know if it was important as much as we wanted that. It was ambitious, and we wanted to make a film, not necessarily a documentary. It was something very cinematic that looked great, that sounded great. It also just might be a blend of different genres, because I don't think it is a music documentary. It's part live. It does have documentary elements, of course, but maybe it's a hybrid of some kind. And I think most people would like to see their movie, whatever it is, in a movie theater. And it's very easy to get a movie made today and maybe just go to streaming and accept that that's what you're going to do, but we wanted to be ambitious and come see you guys in the movie theater.
Yeah, we appreciate it very much. I think you did a great job in this film interviewing all of these incredibly intimidating subjects. Was it always the plan for you to interview folks?
Was it?
Well, it was. I mean, and the thing is, you know, I was a journalist, and you know, I watch other journalists interview people, and there's a layer of guard that's there for any time, you know, somebody is going to be asked questions and they don't know what context they're going to be taken in. You know, the very first interview Jakob did was Eric Clapton, and I could see in that interview, I was hearing things that I never heard Eric say before. I mean, when he talks about, I dated a girl that Keith Moon was, I mean, he never said stuff like that. And so I just saw that, and also, you know, sort of admitting the transparency of those influences from the Buffalo Springfield song. So I saw in the beginning that was going to be the one of the most important factors in making a film, that we would extract this information about these songs and about that time from them.
Jakob, can you talk a little bit about recording the songs of these amazing artists, and then, I mean, the clips in the film, the scenes in the film where, like, you're preparing to do a Brian Wilson song, and then he's walking into the room to sit down at the piano. Like, how are you feeling in those moments? I mean, what was it like to be able to make the music?
I'd like to pretend that he crashed our session. We had an idea he was coming, but he might have startled us a little bit by coming in the room. You know, we weren't taking these songs and flipping them on their heads. We were being respectful, right. and I think that they could respond to our versions. So I wasn't necessarily nervous about playing them these versions. Excited, I would say, because I think we're a great band, and we're not the Wrecking Crew, but maybe by today's standards we could be. But you know, I thought we were doing great versions, so I thought they'd be pleased.
Definitely. We've got time for some from the crowd. I'll start here on the end.
Thank you for a wonderful film. And I have a question. Is there a soundtrack either to the film or to your concert that you gave at the Orpheum?
Thanks.
Yes, there is. It sounded like we planted you. Funny you ask. Yes. Well, you want to give you have a better idea of the dates
You can
and all.
go home and you could stream it right now, Spotify and Apple Music. The CD will be out on the 28th. And then the vinyl will be out in August. Well, it is a little bit of the concert. There's one thing from the concert, but mainly from the recordings of the music.
We've got one back here.
Can you talk about the soul Neil Young appearance and that sort of bleary, weird, psychedelic ending that you have?
Okay, I can do that. So, you know, for me, there's 3 periods of Laurel Canyon. For us, I would say for us. For you too, right? Okay, so there's 3 periods of Laurel Canyon. There's the period that we're exploring in this film, which is when, you know, the bands come to California chasing the dream of the Beatles. And, you know, Roger McGuinn electrifies folk music, Bells of Rimney. You know, George Harrison hears that. He writes If I Needed Someone, goes on Rubber Soul. Brian Wilson hears Rubber Soul. He writes Pet Sounds. The Beatles hear Pet Sounds. They write Sgt. Pepper. That's the bedrock of everything for making albums for the next 50 years. And when the Byrds come to California, when the Byrds have a hit, they have the mushroom haircuts and the velvet collars, everyone comes to California, chasing that dream. Multiple singers, multiple songwriters. For us, the age of innocence of, you know, the beginning and the birth of the California sound is sort of right there. After that, there's the psychedelic phase. And that's when, you know, the riots on the Sunset Strip happen and the Doors become popular. And the drugs change and people's emotional responses to things change and it gets darker. And then there's a retrenchment to, I think, as Beck says in the film, you know, the individual searching their own path. You know, and there's a country music influence on rock, and you think you have Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Joni Mitchell comes. So for us, that period ends, and it ends really with Expecting to Fly as the sort of metaphor for that. I mean, that song, in a sense, I think is Neil and Jack Nietzsche emulating Sgt. Pepper and A Day in the Life. And it also, in the film, Steven says that was a warning sign. That was when Neil was going to leave. And so for us making the film, you know, we run the film backwards and we're sort of making a nod to A Day in the Life. And Neil picks up his guitar in '66 as we run the film backwards, and when he brings the guitar down, he's in present day playing a psychedelic solo, ushering in the psychedelic era by himself in the room. So we thought that was a good way to end the film, and getting him and interviewing him would have fucked up our ending, so we didn't do that.
We got one back here.
Thank you. I think a lot about the different mediums of art and what each medium can do and the limitations of certain forms of art. Like, you can do some things with painting that you can't do with literature. You can do things with music that you can't do with either. What do you think really makes music stand out among all the different forms of art to you?
Well, okay. To you?
That's up to me. Well, you make a good point. Thanks for putting that in a concise way. I think if I had to be really simple about it, I mean, music, you hear a song that you haven't heard in 20 years, it's still in there. As soon as you hear it, it's nostalgic, and it's an emotional response that, I don't know that looking at a painting does that for me. It might for you. But I know music does that, I think, to almost everybody. It's just, if I could explain why, if I could explain why, I would write a terrific book on it, and then I could do it in a book as well, and I have filmmaker, record maker, and maybe a book too. But I don't know, I think it's just, it's magical. Not that the others aren't, but to me it is.
In some cases, I think music articulates the things that we can't say that we feel, and it takes us to the places maybe that we can't go physically, but we can picture in our minds. And, for this music and for us, I think it represents a magical moment in time that has forever shaped the way we live and think about the world. So that's my answer.
So I had a professor at Yale in 1986 who said, the Beach Boys represented a California that never really was, happy and nothing's going wrong. And then you had the Eagles representing, the real dark side with Hotel California. I was wondering if you would agree with that, or...
Well, I think the Beach Boys, the image of the Beach Boys at one time is about, as Jackson says, 5 guys wearing the same shirt, carrying a surfboard. You think they're just surfing. But in reality, what the Beach Boys represent to us, Brian Wilson, the Beatles, they had George Martin when they wanted to expand what they were doing and get into orchestral arrangements and stuff. It was just Brian. He was a kid. He was in that room. He was directing these incredible musicians, the Wrecking Crew, and he had all these ideas in his head. So what he did in terms of the architecture of sound is so immense, and just the sound of good vibrations and that reverb and whatever he chose and his engineer chose immediately take you there no matter where you are in the world. The Eagles, that's a different thing. I mean, I think I love the Eagles, some of it, and worked with Don Henley, and I don't want to say anything otherwise because I want them to like me anyway.
I just had a quick question about, you mentioned my first question was originally going to be the contemporary artists that you picked to perform live at the Orpheum and in the interview sections of the movie too. But then also sort of part of that is, how does the Laurel Canyon, that neighborhood, manifest itself today, musically?
Okay, how did we choose the artists, the more contemporary artists? Yeah. Well, very organically. I mean, we didn't really have a wish list. Those are people that we know. I mean, traveling around for all these years, become friends with those people, and they all have a connection to Southern California, either having been from there or being there now or having just spent time there. And they're all songwriters, and as Andy said, a lot of the bedrock of what we're all doing does begin right then and there. And I think you can hear that music in Beck's music. I think you can hear it in Regina Spektor's music too.
And in your music.
Thank you. And my music as well. But it was really organic, and I guess if we put a big list together, it could have gone on forever. There's loads of people that would be awesome to have in there, but why not start with something organic anyhow? And people we know are pretty awesome as it is. And what was the second question?
Are there people in that? Are those the people that are in that kind of area of LA that are still working, making music there? Because it was mentioned in the movie that there's still music being made in the hills? I'm wondering.
I'm sure there is, and probably a whole lot of other stuff they're making in those hills. But, it's not the same, though. I think that's why that time is special. I mean, I'm sure some people here have been through Los Angeles. You have to go over that canyon quite a lot anyway, just to pass through from one side of the hill to the other. And you can do that without really noticing or feeling the magic that may have been there. But it's always been our artist community. It's always been very bohemian, and I think it still is. But I don't know if the bands are doing the same thing up there. I think it might be awfully expensive for young bands to live up there now. And we have other ways to share music and share ideas, mostly through technology. So do people have to work on a song at night and then walk to someone's house the next morning? They probably don't have to do that as much. But I wish they would, but we do other things now.
Hey, first of all, thanks for the movie. It was great. And I love all the music in it, but I'm not a history person, so a lot of this was new to me and somewhat enlightening. I am a Deadhead, though, and I'm wondering where they fit in and what kind of overlap, if any, do you know about?
Deadheads?
Well, I will say this. My major in college was the Grateful Dead. I wasn't supposed to be. I was supposed to go to law school. I fucked that up. And I love Jerry Garcia, and I love all that he represented. He was an inexhaustible storehouse of knowledge of folk and blues and bluegrass and country and all of this music. But as far as his fitting in here, I don't think San Francisco and the San Francisco sound, which is more, I mean, those guys are more about, closer to jazz in a sense, because they were, improvisational, and this is more structured in song and harmony and the 12-string. So I don't think it relates at all. I think in '67 you have to get a car and go from Laurel Canyon to San Francisco, and then you're good. But other than that, I don't think he really relates to the California sound of Laurel Canyon.
I think we got one more up here.
All the way in the back.
Yeah, I really liked the film as well. It really brought me back to a time of innocence and just simplicity, just absolute genius as compared to most music nowadays. Just you can see that simplicity is really genius, and it's so hard to manifest, but so simple and so genius and so beautiful and so like a flower that's blooming, and got rid of all the facade and all the layers of bullshit, and just simplicity and love and pure spirit. It was really a wonderful thing. I hope Dylan does more with this. I hope this is not the end of it. I like the Wallflowers. This is really from my time, and I really miss this kind of music. And I don't think it's being created now. And certainly your dad's part of that as well. But just the simplicity to the core, eliminating the layers, and just getting to the absolute core of what a human being is, and the simplicity was just fantastic.
Thank you. Well, then let's all have gratitude like yourself that you were there and you got to experience it, because we probably won't again. So we stuck it up in a movie for you to reminisce. And let's have gratitude for having it at all. Thank you, guys.